broadcasting from somewhere in the freedom state of Florida, bringing the real to Realsville, bringing the truth into the light. Welcome, the Polish Pontificator.
All right, folks. I don't know if you've been following, but I have, as the Polish Pontificator, the Polish presidential elections and their significance both in Europe and in the U.S. The U.S. primarily for defense purposes, because Poland is probably, militarily speaking, the most significant country in Europe. It is the linchpin of European security. It is the only way that Russia can attack Europe. They would have to come through Poland. And so Poland is by far the most militarily significant piece of real estate in Europe. There will be other approaches, but they all have problems. Poland is relatively flat, and the obvious path through or to Western Europe would have to come through Poland. So the significance is the NATO alliance and the defense of Europe, if we're still interested in that. And also, the Poles are natural allies with the U.S. They still love the U.S., unlike the West Europeans, the Germans, the French, and the Spaniards, and I'm not sure the Italians seem to be in a state of change these days, but most of the West Europeans are certainly not in love with the U.S. And forget the Brits. They're pretty much worthless these days, certainly as a land force. I mean, they may have some significant naval presence, but as far as a land military, no, I don't think so. Not much. Also, the Poles, by far, probably have, believe it or not, the most significant military, land military, in Europe. Right now, they are building up a tank force, which will be roughly 900 plus tanks, primarily the Korean or a Polish version of the Korean K2, what the Koreans call the Black Panther, the South Koreans, of course. And a lot of people think that is by far the best tank, better than the Leopard 2 of any variety. You know, the Leopard 2 7, Leopard 2 in any of its other incarnations, earlier incarnations. And better than the Abrams. So, but the Poles are heavily invested in the Korean tanks. They had foregone any purchase or additional purchases of German tanks because they couldn't rely upon Germany to supply them any of their damn Leopards, dubious as they are, as dubiously as they performed in Ukraine against Russians. And they also, being Germans, couldn't promise delivery until the mid-30s, the 2030s, believe it or not. And the Poles are sitting there thinking, you gotta be freaking kidding me. We need something long before 2035. So, anyway, they are developing like the largest mechanized military presence or military units in Europe. They have probably one of the best disciplined militaries. They have a very well structured military army, and very much patterned after the U.S. I mean, everything they do is patterned after the U.S. And they have an excellent service rifle, the Grot, which is has performed very well in the in the Ukrainian combat. They've given a number of them to Ukrainians, and they seem to really appreciate them. So anyway, and they have I think like 50 F-16s. They've ordered 35 of the F-35s. Seems appropriate, 35 F-35s. And they are in negotiations to purchase some of the new Eagle 2s, the F-15-2s that are just coming off of production lines. And supposedly still the dominant air combat plane in existence. So anyway, so from what I gather, what the F-35s will be used for is to plow the fields and clear the anti-aircraft away from the Eagles, and then the Eagles come in and they have a large payload capacity, and then they start to inflict the major damage to whoever the adversary happens to be. So anyway, that is a quick summary. Poland is also by far, 95% of all the military equipment, munitions, ammunition, heavy, tanks, whatever we're supplying to the Koreans goes through southern Poland, because Poland has a long, long border with with Ukraine. So anyway, that's a quick summary. So anyway, I was watching the Polish presidential election, and you had let's call it a leftist candidate, and supported by the EU. Basically, the bastard was an EU ass-kisser. And, well, to be more precise, he was going to kiss the ass of the Polish prime minister, and the Polish prime minister is a EU ass-kisser. So he was the ass-kisser of an ass-kisser. And then we had a guy named Nawrocki. And Nawrocki was this guy that was put up to run. He had been running the National Institute for Remembrance, which basically was put in charge with keeping, it's basically a museum that was dedicated to studying and keeping alive and the history alive of the atrocities of communist rule in Poland, what Poland got after World War II. So Poland's gift after World War II, after they had survived Hitler, was to hand them over to Stalin, a worse butcher than Hitler. But anyway, be that as it may. So Nawrocki was an independent candidate. He was put up by the Conservative Party, even though he wasn't a member of it. And you could say they supported him, but a lot of times they were AWOL. And that man was on his own. And they ran this campaign that eventually devolved into nothing but personal attacks against Nawrocki from the left. It was a Polish version of the Democrats' campaign against Trump. In every vicious way. Last-minute accusations. The guy had, obviously, Nawrocki had a rough childhood. He was born in a lower middle class, from a more lower middle class family. He had grown up and trained as a boxer and fought in these fight clubs for money, which was illegal. He engaged in, I guess, what they call soccer hooliganism. There were accusations that he was paid to go and beat people up. None of which was ever corroborated, but they threw it out there. he never denied that he participated in these fight clubs, these street fights that people would pay to watch. And so, I mean, he grew up in the rough and tumble of the port city of Gdańsk. And got himself straightened out. He continued to train as a boxer and fight in some low-paying semi-pro boxing matches, putting himself through school. So he got his BS, MS, and PhD in history from the University of Gdańsk, where he lived, in history. And then he became a fairly noted, I mean, he wrote some significant historical works, but probably one of his most famous works was he wrote this novel under a pseudonym about some kid growing up in communist-era Gdańsk and as a street thug. And it was only later on, I mean, evidently it's a popular book. And only later on did anyone figure out that that's Nawrocki. That was, whatever pseudonym, I forgot the pseudonym he used. But it was only later discovered that that was a Nawrocki. And then they started saying, well, you couldn't write and be so accurate in your portrayal of this underworld that this character lives in had you not lived in it yourself. So, like I say, there were a million accusations against him, claiming that he had brought prostitutes to the hotel for customers when he worked there as a bar thumper, basically, a bar bouncer. And he denied it, and they accused him of it, and the people who accused him of it refused to come forward. They were, of course, anonymous. And but anyway, they dumped this all on him at well, actually, they've been dumping it on him throughout the entire campaign, but they threw in a bunch of additional accusations claiming that one of his bodyguards was a hitman. Anyway, at the very last week before the election. So, I mean, they had him everything from providing prostitutes, some kind of a pimp, to street thug, to, illegal fighter, to some guy who would rent himself out as not a hitman, but a strong man for one of the mob groups in Gdańsk. And, but it basically is a kind of a badass guy. Actually, in the end, I think they helped promote him with that portrait that they made for him. Anyway, and so none of it was on policies anymore. It was like against Trump. It was all personal, vicious, personal attacks. And it's like I say, it was amazing the similarities between the campaign against Nawrocki from the left and the campaign against Trump from the left. And as I've said a million times before, the left everywhere, I don't care if it's the left in Poland, left in Germany, left in France, left in England, US, Canada, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, they're all the same. They are all the same. Conservative groups can be different. I mean, the conservative groups in Poland would have a lot in common with the US, but, they have different agendas, different things they want to conserve. So anyway, at the end of the day, they had the election last weekend. And at first, the first exit polls released indicated that the leftist won. The leftist name, in case you were curious, was Trzaskowski. And that Trzaskowski won, and that he was up there and celebrating, and his wife was kissing on him, and graffiti or whatever was falling. Not graffiti, but well, anyway, I'll have to come back to that. Anyway, was falling from the ceiling and balloons. And at the end, they announced that he was in the lead by like 1.5 points, and they were celebrating. And but they announced that the exit polls were only accurate within plus or minus 3%. So this idiot with his little bit over 1% lead was out there jumping up and down, claiming that he was the next president. Well, by 5 o'clock in the morning, that idiot had lost the election. Nawrocki had won. And so the leftist, Trzaskowski, had made an idiot out of himself, jumping up and down and claiming that he was now the president of all of Poland. And the immediate reaction was pretty much exactly what you might think. Viktor Orban from Hungary congratulated him. The Slovak president congratulated him, both very conservative. And I think the Czech prime minister and the Lithuanian prime minister. And then silence from the Polish prime minister, nothing. Nothing from the German prime minister or the German chancellor. Nothing from the French president. Nothing. Nothing from the Brits. Now, Trump congratulated him, not surprisingly. But and so did J.D. Vance and Rubio, all sent congratulations. And of course, Trump, right before this election, well, actually it was something like 3 weeks before the election, had met with Nawrocki in the White House, and they had a nice picture, a photo op, so that Nawrocki could go back to Poland, showing that he had good relationships with Trump. Of course, then the newspapers in Poland are very heavily leftist, the establishment newspapers. I mean, there are a lot of conservative papers too, and there's a conservative television channel. But the two major papers are, well, one is left, like New York Times, and the other is kind of tries to play the middle, but is really leftist. And they were, their coverage was a campaign for the leftist. Just like every paper in the U.S. was, outside of, I don't know if I can name a paper in the U.S. that was in favor of Trump. Hell, the Wall Street Journal wasn't in favor of Trump. So anyway, at the end of the day, like I say, Nawrocki won by 1.7%. I mean, it was a nail biter. And what happened today was just exactly what I would have thought. German members of the Wehrmacht, well, not the Wehrmacht, but of the Bundestag, have already started issuing threats. And they say, unless you pass certain laws, we will stop all or any additional EU funds to the country. They also had French have come out and made some snide remarks. The Brits are still silent. But the deal is, the significance of it in Europe is because Poland was really one of the countries that they needed to pull into to their board collective to help establish this new European superstate. I mean, the Germans are still hell-bent on it. Of course, the Germans would control that new superstate, just like they do the euro. I mean, the Germans are the ones that manage the euro. The French want it because they think they are the political superpower of Europe. And so the Germans are the economic superpower, and the French are the political superpower of Europe. At least that's the perceived division of labor between those two. And in the end, they needed what they called the Weimar Triangle. And the French and the Germans were really pushing this. The Weimar Triangle is this group of three nations which was going to be the new cornerstone to the new European superstate. And the Weimar Triangle consists of Paris, France, Berlin, Germany, and Warsaw, Poland. It's those three countries, France, Germany, Poland. And they needed Poland to be basically, as far as I was concerned, when I looked at their position, I mean, Poland was going to be a rump state for Germany. You know, the Germans were to basically control it economically. And it would exist, at least on paper, as an independent state, but its politics would be completely subordinate to the Germans and the French. And that is what Nawrocki had been conducting the campaign a bit on his side. Well, actually not a bit. This whole campaign is that we have to preserve our sovereignty. You know, we know what it is to lose our sovereignty. Hell, we were removed from the map for 120 years after being partitioned by the Prussians, the Russians, and the Austrians. We gained our independence back for a short period of time after World War I, thanks to Woodrow Wilson and his 14 points. And now we're about ready to lose it again, and to a European superstate, and to be absorbed into it. And then there was another big thing besides losing their sovereignty, is this new immigration pact that the West Europeans have basically foisted upon the East Europeans, who have remained safe countries for women to walk around at nighttime, and pretty much crime-free. And so the immigration pact basically says that the Germans and the French and the Spaniards, who are insane what they're doing, can dump their refuge. The North Africans that are coming flooding across the Mediterranean, the Arabs and Muslims that are coming from different stands, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, whatever godforsaken Southwest Asian country, Bangladesh, and we can foist those people and dump them into the East European countries so that they can share in some of our wealth of this refuse that's washed up on our shore, and we don't have the courage to send it back from whence it came. So that was a huge issue. I mean, all the Poles have to do is to look at the crime that's coming from migrants, illegal migrants, that is epidemic and endemic throughout Western Europe. Germany, which actually has a larger Muslim population than France, largely because of all the Turks they took in the 60s. And the French and the Spaniards and the Italians could all dump their garbage into Poland, into Hungary, into Slovakia, into the Czech Republic, the Balts, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. We can dump it all into these East European states. And that was a huge issue. I mean, all you have to do today, I don't know if you guys have been following the riots that are going on in Paris. I mean, they have a whole population that they didn't invite in, but they allowed to come in uninvited and illegally. And now they live in terror of, fear of them. Sub-Saharan Africans, North African Muslims, Muslims from, like I say, the different stands, Muslim populations from Lebanon and Syria. I mean, absolute fear. And even mind-bogglingly, it was the Saudis who warned the European capitals, principally Berlin and Paris, that the world's worst Islamic radicals, I mean, the real wackos, were not to be found in any of the Arab countries anymore. They had all relocated to Europe. And these idiots continued to accept them. And then they wanted to dump them into the streets of Warsaw, into the streets of Prague, into the streets of Budapest, into the streets of Bratislava. I mean, every East European capital and the entire country. The leftist idiots in Poland tried to deny that they were negotiating with these idiots to allow this to happen, but it came out pretty well that they had been negotiating with the other West Europeans behind the Poles' backs. So anyway, that was a huge issue. But again, when you have a media that is completely compliant and subservient, you can suppress that. But anyway, the truth came out. Poles responded appropriately. And now the reward for fighting back and everything is to have the Germans start to threaten them. If you don't pass these immigration laws that will allow us to dump the worst of our garbage into your country, if you don't pass certain judicial reforms, I mean, they want to get into the Polish court system and dictate how that operates. If you don't, they want to try to force the Poles to adopt the euro. The Poles still have their own currency, the zloty. And that would be suicide for the Poles to adopt. You talk about giving away sovereignty. Just adopt some third-party currency, especially one that's really run by the Germans. Absolute insanity. So anyway, at the end of the day, what has happened there is that the conservative won, and the reward for having won is threats, condemnation, insults, vicious commentary, everything that Trump was rewarded with when he won. I mean, the parallels are amazing. And it also plays an important role with the Ukraine war. Like I said, 95% of everything, militarily speaking, that we provide for the Ukrainians goes through Poland, the southern border. Nawrocki is not as infatuated with Zelensky as the rest of the West Europeans. He's very much a Zelensky skeptic. He certainly doesn't like Russians. I mean, no Pole loves Russians. Poles and Russians are Slavic brothers, but they despise one another. But anyway, as far as Nawrocki is concerned, Zelensky has been pretty much haughty and arrogant in his behavior towards Poland, and he doesn't particularly appreciate it. He has let it be known that he will not support Ukraine joining NATO, and only under some extreme conditions will he accept Ukraine within the EU. So once again, of course, what do they do with that? What do they immediately do with that? They call him a Putin puppet. I mean, a guy who couldn't stand Putin, but it's always good for a nasty remark, a petty jab, to claim you're a Putin puppet if you don't support Zelensky and everything that he wants. So anyway, that's a quick update. Like I said, the things that are amazing about it are the parallels between Trump and Nawrocki and their campaigns for president and the left and their attacks on them. I mean, it's almost identical. It is almost identical.